Hubert and Isabella Ferns of Invercargill, New Zealand, have Catholic Irish and Protestant Scottish backgrounds. In this video, we look at Ireland and consider the history and places that surround Hubert's forebears. Hubert and Isabella's descendants might also consider that scenes and stories shown here form a part of their family heritage too. The Irish ancestors of the Ferns family lived in the province of Leinster. The capital of Leinster, and where the king had his castle, was in the south of the province at Ferns in County Wexford. While the town of Ferns bears his family name, Hubert's direct ancestors came from further north in mid-Leinster. They were from a major peat bog area in the centre of Ireland, where they lived in the town of Birr in County Offaly. Let's now explore these Ferns Roots, the home territory of Hubert's ancestors. And we'll start with the king's northern fortress at the Rock of Dunamaise.
While Ireland's history goes back far enough that it gets a bit murky with time, today is a bit murky with the weather. This is the Rock of Dunamaise. It dates from about the Iron Age, and it's had various generations of fortresses built on the top. The remains of what we can see up there at the moment is from Dermot McMurrough's reign. He's one of the kings of Leinster, province of Ireland, and this is sort of the northern tip of Leinster, one of his fortresses that he gave away. There's an archaeological dig going on here at the moment. They're pretty keen on preserving their ancient memorials. Dermot McMurrough gave away the rock and its castles with his daughter. His hand in marriage. It was the dowry, and it was to a guy, Strongbow, who helped him early on in another war. Well, the Rock of Dunamaise is significant as well as being for Dermot McMurrough and the other kings of Ireland. Their main seat was in a small village down south, a place called Ferns. So Ferns was once basically the administrative capital of the province of Leinster. And this was just another of the outposts of the McMurroughs, but up in County Laois, next door to County Offaly. Well, this is John's Mall in Birr, County Offaly. John's Moor was named after John Parsons, one of the sons of the Earls of Ross. This is John's Hall, which was originally a schoolhouse in the mall. So the mall itself is obviously very important to the Earls of Ross. This is William, and he's the third Earl of Ross. The mall's got a lot of Georgian style houses in it, and a relatively significant feature is the town library, which used to be the Presbyterian church. Must have been a bit of a rarity in this area. Just a couple of features in the grounds of John's Hall. There's this cannon which was captured at Sevastopol, 1855. The other thing is this stone, the Birr stone, which is recorded in early history about the 12th century as Umbilicus Hibernia, the navel of Ireland, something in the very centre of the country. Just following up a bit on William, the 3rd Earl. He was the builder of the world's largest telescope. 1845, it was largest for about 70-75 years. Some major stellar discoveries were made, like this great spiral nebula. This is Connaught Street. It's getting a bit of an upgrade. It's got some nice old shop fronts. So anyway, this used to be the market square in Birr, just about the centre of town. The statue there is a monument to the Manchester martyrs, who were 3 Irish nationalists executed in England in about 1867. So this is Crotty's Church, opened in 1839. It's a tangible remnant of the Crotty Schism, which divided the Catholic community in 19th century Birr. This is Emmett Square, named after Robert Emmett, who is a martyr. This is a Doric column, and it's called a Doric column because of its shape. Used to have a statue on top of it of the Duke of Cornwall. After the Battle of Culloden, that was where Bonnie Prince Charlie got his comeuppance. The Duke was taken off the top there because he thought they thought that the local Scot soldiers in the area might get a bit miffed. This is Dooley's Hotel. It's very famous. It was burnt down at one stage by some guys on the hunt. They were sort of playing around a bit. I got the Duke of Cornwall wrong. He was actually the Duke of Cumberland. Well, this is the Elm Grove Bridge in Birr, crossing the Camcor River. Not sure if these are elms or not. This is R&J Wallace's distillery, built around 1805. Caught fire in 1889 and the old Camcor River here was covered in flaming whiskey. Must have saddened a few hearts. Well, I think a visit to Birr wouldn't be complete without a quick whip around the cemetery, just to see what we can find. Quite a few imitations of Celtic crosses on the headstones here. Nice little tree-lined lanes. The lady in the hotel told me that things were pretty well divided up here. Catholics on the left and Protestants on the right. Alright, what was that? Yes, look at that. One of those headstones has got a keg of beer out in front of it. Go and have a look, eh? Now I promise I didn't rig this. Yep, it is the same grave. Well, I don't know if it's prophetic or not. I suspect that what happened, I had a wander around here last night and spotted it and thought I've got to take a photo of this, it's pretty impressive. The keg was sitting up a bit closer to the headstone at that stage. I don't know whether it's empty now, but I think the guy was using it to stand on to clean headstones. He's got some cleaning gear and behind the headstone there. Well, I think that makes up pretty good yarn. Bit of blarney, as they say here. Well, we're now inside the Birr Castle Domain, the grounds walled off from the common hoi polloi. Really nice parkland. All this parkland put together by the Earl of Ross, or the first Earl, planned and arranged it all. Well, about 1620 or so, the O'Carrolls of Ely had one of their castles here. However, this was granted to Sir Lawrence Parsons then in the course of the Stuart plantations, so that was 1620. And they were made the Earls of Ross. The ground's got a few muddy tracks in it at the moment. They had the Irish Driving Championships through the grounds here last weekend. So this is still the family home of the Parsons, the Earls of Ross. The grounds, as I said, laid out by the first Earl, continued by the second Earl. In fact, the whole family of Parsons were pretty smart cookies. The third Earl, in fact, won himself some fame. He built a giant telescope. So we're talking here about the 1840s, and this telescope was largest in the world until about 1917. So these great big walls were put up to house the scope. It could only swing in one direction, up and down sort of thing, not round about. So they had constructed this great big wooden casing. Down the bottom there somewhere there was a 6-foot mirror, so it was a reflector telescope. It's put in. That mirror is currently in the Science Museum in London. So the third Earl here was responsible for not just this telescope, but a series of them. In fact, his first one was a 36-inch reflector telescope built in on this sort of framework arrangement. There's the Earl showing guests around his telescope, and a group in front of the mirror of the telescope. So a fairly complex sort of a mechanism. They could actually swivel the top slightly either side of the meridian. In fact, looking at this one here, there's a guy up the top of the telescope. He's looking into the eyepiece. Or, well, he's not looking into it, he's standing beside the eyepiece of the thing. Here's a model of the thing which Mr. Gosling has built. Guy from the Science Museum in London. We're probably a wee bit early for photography to have an impact on the telescope. So a lot of the output was done in, or in fact all the output was done in sketches, like this one of a whirlpool galaxy. So the first and second Earls laid out the grounds. The third Earl built telescopes. The third Earl's wife was no slouch either, because she was one of the really early inventors of photography. Moving right along now with stories about the Earls. I think the fourth Earl, before he actually became Earl, was also quite a smart sort of a character. I think he also invented a telescope and did some observations with that. And using his telescope, he was the first guy to calculate the surface temperature of the moon based on his observations through it. Now this bit over here is the foundation work for an old water wheel. The water wheel was used in aiding the draining of some of the farmlands when it flooded. But it could well have been the impetus for the fourth Earl's brother to come into the act to show his amount of brains as well. The brother's name was Charles. Charles Parson is recorded in history as being the inventor of the steam turbine. The navy of the day was running on steam power, and they weren't aware of how efficient steam turbines were, and they couldn't really be convinced just by say-so. So Charles Parsons fitted a steam turbine to his own yacht. He renamed the yacht Turbinia, and then he proceeded to whiz backwards and forwards through a fleet of naval ships, and none of them could keep up with him, and he made an extremely suitable demonstration, and after that steam turbine powered vessels were the thing of the day. One of the features of turbine power was generating for electricity, and in fact Wellington in its earlier days had a Parsons steam turbine for generating its own electricity, an oil-fired steam turbine. So the note here says that the gardens were designed by Anne, the Countess of Ross, on a marriage in 1935 to the 7th Earl of Ross, and it's a combination of their initials. I think it was Anne, who is Tony Armstrong Jones' mother. This is now the tourist centre of the grounds, the exhibition area, toilets, coffee shop. We've got the moat in the front door into the actual castle grounds itself. The moat's probably got more grass clippings in it now than water. However, there's something to keep the crowds at bay. Over the river there is Banniger, or Banniger, not quite sure of that one. Little town which has guarded this bridge for long enough. It's a major crossing on the Shannon River. There's quite a boat harbour here, or marina on the other side of the river. And guarded on the Galway side is this thing here, which is known as a Martello Tower. And Martello Towers were, I'm sure, formed to protect from invasion against Napoleon. They're pretty ancient sort of towers. I suppose a fair question is, why would Napoleon want to invade the middle of Ireland? And basically I think the answer to that is the Shannon is such an incredible waterway. Anybody who wanted to came raiding up it, Vikings or Danes or English, whoever it might have been. Another tower over there. I think obviously this place had a drawbridge at some stage just to get into it. Well, we've moved a few miles north of Banniger. We're now at a place called Shannon Harbour. And Shannon Harbour was built around the 1800s as a terminus for the Grand Canal. Grand Canal runs from Dublin on the Liffey all the way across Ireland to the Shannon and down to Limerick. Well, the canal system was a bit slow and eventually things died out, and the Terminus Hotel over there, as you can see, is dilapidated a wee bit. Then around the 1960s and 70s the pleasure boating side of things took a new lease of life and seeing a bit more action around here again now. Pretty sleepy quiet now, but it looks like they've put a fair bit of effort. And at one stage, covered shed there, dry docks, some workhouse facilities over on the side. Well, this was sort of the end of the canal for a while, until they extended it fully to the Shannon. So a major terminus, there's a lock here, carries you on down to Banniger. And now we're at the Bordnamona Blackwater Peat Works, and they run the railway system called the Clonmacnoise and West Offaly Railway. The statue here is at the front of the building is quite significant. Shows a guy lifting turfs or sods. Small pile of sods there at the bottom. It's still very much standard to burn peat briquettes around the town.
Now here in this area there is 20,000 acres. Okay, now on the trip today we're going to go 5.5 miles around, right through the bog, and you'll see about 6,000 acres or so. Okay, and as I said, unfortunately because the weather is bad, there is no production of peat going on. Okay, now what they make here in this works is milled peat. Okay, now milled peat is basically loose peat. It's like powder. Do you know the peat briquettes, or the sods of turf? They're all peat basically, but you know what I mean, in blocks or whatever. But milled peat is just like powder. It's just finely cut peat. Okay, and what they use the milled peat for is to generate electricity. So it's supplied to the power station. That cuts the sods of turf, and the sods that you see Kieran cutting now are what dries out and will be burned in the fires. Okay? Do you see this? There's the turf.
The slate.
The slate, exactly. And that's what they burn in fires.
In the milled peat area. So the milled peat is what they burn in the power station rather than the briquettes, which are for home consumption.
The bogland that's very wet.
Yeah, for the one with the Shannon though. We put it out.
Yeah.
The milled peat is brought to the Shannon Bridge power station by rail. The peat is actually stored out on the paddocks and it's loaded into the trains when it's required. But just something else along the side here, just raised bits of ground up on the edges of the bogs. They're called eskers. It was high land sort of above the bog, so it was used by the pilgrims in travelling from one side of Ireland to the other. So they were also known as the Pilgrim's Way. The road we're on at the moment is actually built on one. So we're at Clonmacnoise now. There's the esker ridges, which the pilgrims used to walk along. And we're right beside the Shannon River again. And a lot of ruins around Clonmacnoise. It used to be quite a significant place in religious history. It was a real headquarters of the monk community of Ireland. Now it's done up very well as a visitor centre. One of the pilgrims. Well, this is King Flan's cross. It's a Celtic scriptural cross, and the various panels on the cross denote scenes from the scriptures. Somebody there getting a piggyback. Someone else making music. guy there doing hunting with his hawk, I think. Trotting on someone else as well. It's not all just cemeteries and crosses. Really, there was sort of 8 or 9 little chapels or churches around the place. This is Temple Doolin. So Temple Doolin here. They tacked another one on the back just to save building an extra wall. Temple Herpin. And behind Temple Herpin, Temple Meaglin. A few nice window frames and things. Yeah. There's a few holes in the walls here. It looks like beams have gone in. Extra floor, perhaps some storage areas. Quite a significant number of headstones. And here looks like down the bottom there is a cemetery in current use. A lot of slabs in the ground there. And the biggest structure around here is the cathedral. Quite a nice doorway there into the cathedral, a few interesting figures above the door and some nice carving and sculpture work. Inside the cathedral there's quite a few graves, quite a few burials. It's a disused church. It was supposed to be very holy ground and it was a very popular place for burials. Down there close to the river, Temple Thingen. Got a small miracle happening here at Clonmacnoise. We've got some weak and watery sun starting to appear. Typically around Ireland there's a lot of these round towers. This particular one is a O'Rourke's Tower, and it's reputed to have been built by Fergal O'Rourke. He died about the year 964, and the tower is said to have been repaired about 1120 by O'Malone, the bishop in Hubert.